right. So can you tell me if you can see my page now?
Yes.
All right. So yes, this is going to be the workshop for review for final exam. So let's take a look at, again, this is going to be like a very big one. I don't know, 44 questions. So let's see, from question 1 to 4, which one do you think you want to work on?
1 and 2.
All right, let's look at 1 and 2. Okay, so first thing first, do you recognize what these two lines mean?
Absolute value.
That's it. Those are going to be the absolute value. So when it comes to absolute value problems, this is how it's going to go. I'm going to write down absolute value of 6x plus 1 minus 9 is equal to negative 13. Do you know how you can solve this equation?
You first add 9.
That's it. So you're going to get the absolute value of 6x plus 1 equals, what is negative 13 plus 9?
Negative 4.
Negative 4, that's it. Now, before doing anything, for absolute values, sometimes we just have to look at what absolute value means. So this function is supposed to make everything positive. Does it make sense that the answer for an absolute value is a negative number?
No, so it's no solution?
Exactly. So it's going to be choice D. Normally, we just say, if it was positive, it would say 6x plus 1 plus or minus the number that we have here. But the absolute value can never be equal to a negative number. So straight up, it doesn't have any solution.
Okay.
All right, so that's for number 1. Then did you say number 2?
Yes.
Okay. So for number 2, we are having f of x equals negative 4x squared minus 7. G of x is going to be x minus 5. All right, what is the question asking us to do?
It's asking us to minus f minus g.
And then it says find f minus g for negative 4. So first we have to find f minus g of x. And then we have to substitute the negative 4. Now, do you know how we can do this one?
Plug in negative 4 for x.
Well, for these types of questions, we are going to just follow what we see here. So if you want to find f minus g of x, you are going to write down f of x minus g of x. And then what is the equation for f of x?
Negative 4x squared minus 7.
That's it. Then you're going to have a minus here. Try to put this in parentheses to avoid mistakes. What is your g of x?
X minus 5.
X minus 5. That's it. Now let's try to simplify this a little bit. What can we do?
You can minus the 7 and the 5.
Yeah, okay. So for that one, to make sure that we are not making mistakes, let's try to write every step. So negative 4x squared minus 7. Distribute the negative in your parentheses. So you're going to get negative x positive 5. Now, you're right, those are going to be the like terms. So you're going to add them. The thing is, be careful with the sign of the negative 7. So you're going to get negative 4x squared minus x. Negative 7 plus 5, what is that?
Negative 2.
Negative 2, that's it. So we did f of x minus g of x. This is what we got. I'm going to put it back here. Let's see. All right, f minus g of x is this. Minus x minus 2. All right, now if we want to find f minus g of negative 4, what should we do?
Plug in negative 4 for x.
That's it. So you're going to have negative 4. Try to put this in parentheses again to make sure you don't miss any signs. So minus negative 4 minus 2 is equal to. This is going to be negative 4 times 16. Negative times negative is positive 4 minus 2. Okay, what do you think is the answer for this one?
Negative 4 times 16 plus 2.
That's it. So negative 4 times 16 plus 4 minus 2. Now negative 4 times 16 is negative 64, I think. Let me see. Yep. So this is negative 64 plus 4 minus 2. And what is going to be the answer if you do that?
Negative 58.
So let's see. Negative 64 plus 4 is going to be negative 60.
Oh, negative 62.
That's it. Negative 60 minus 2, negative 62. So it should be choice B. This was D. This was choice B. Again, with these ones, it's very easy to like miss a negative sign or something. So if you want to do that, especially if there is like minus G, make sure that you put the G inside the parentheses. You distribute the negative. And for this part of it, negative 4, again, try to put that in parentheses so you're not missing anything.
Okay.
All right. Now, looking at like questions 3 to 5, is there anything we want to do?
3 and 5.
Okay, 3 and 5. This one. All right. Can I erase this part?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, it should be good. So we are having 5 times 4x plus 2 minus 4x less than 4 times 3 plus 4x close parentheses minus 6. All right, so 5 4x plus 2 minus 4x 4 3 plus 4x minus 6. Okay, so how do you think we can solve this inequality?
Distributing.
All right, if I distribute, what I should write?
20x plus 10.
That's it. So 20x plus 10
Minus 4x.
minus 4x less than
7 or 12.
12
Plus 16x.
plus 16x
minus 6.
minus 6.
You combine like terms.
Mm-hmm. So in this case, 20x negative 4x. What are like terms here?
12 and negative 6.
That's it.
So you get 16x plus 10
16x plus 10.
is less than 6 plus 16x.
That's it. So 12 minus 6 is 6 plus 16x. All right.
Now minus 16x.
Minus 16x on both sides. Yeah. Let's see what's going to happen.
And that's the answer.
Mm-hmm. So here's how it's going. We did all the work. The 16x was canceled. Now we are having 10 less than 6. Does this make any sense?
No solution.
That's it. So if it had given us, let's say if this was the other way around. So if it was 10 greater than 6, we would say this is true all the time. So your solution would be just all x in that case. But when it doesn't make any sense, then it means that you have no solution. So it's going to be
Okay.
all right. And let me also check these real quick to make sure we are doing it. So DBA at the end. Yep, DBA. All right, let's go back to 5. So a rectangular room is 11 feet narrower than its length. If 242 square feet of carpet is needed to cover the entire room, what is the length of the room? So again, when it comes to word problems, there are a few things that we need to know, we need to do. First, we have to write down all the information that we know. And second, if it applies, we need to draw any shapes or anything that is going to help us, any diagrams. So first, we know that we have a rectangular room. So the diagram is supposed to be a rectangle. It's 11 feet narrower than its length. So basically, when it says narrower, we are talking about width and then length. So I'm going to call the width just W, L for the length. 11 feet narrower than length means W is supposed to be length minus 11. This is sort of like how we translate this into a math equation. Now, if 242 square feet of carpet is needed to cover the entire room, what is the length of the room? The carpet is covering the entire room, and the number that it gave us is 242 square feet. If you don't instantly know that this is the area, just look at the unit here. When it is like meters squared or square feet, it means that you're having the area. So A is 242. And what is the question asking us to find?
The length.
The length. So L is this. So again, I wrote down all the information I have. Some of them are numbers, some of them you have to rewrite them as equations. This is what I need to know. This is my diagram. So again, the only way that we can connect all of these is to first write down the formula for area. How do you think we can find area of a rectangle?
I think it's area equals 2 length times 2 width.
It is similar. The only thing is that what you just told me is kind of like, well, first of all, that is adding. So when we do 2 width plus 2 length, We are not finding the area, we are finding like the parameter of this one. So it's kind of like this for area. Width times length.
Mm.
So area, width times length, that's how we are supposed to find it. Now, we say we are looking for length. We have two variables that we don't know what they are. If we knew one of them, it would be easy. So the only thing we can do at this point is to use substitution.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we can do that in this
Plug in
formula.
11. Plug in L minus 11 for W.
That's it. So let's do L minus 11 for W times L. What is that equal to?
L squared minus 11. L.
That's it. L squared minus 11L. Now we say, okay, so on one hand, area is equal to L squared minus 11L. On the other hand, they told us area is 242. So now it's time to put these equal to each other. We say L squared minus 11L is equal to 242. Now, after that, it's just solving a quadratic equation. How do you think we can do this?
Minus 242.
That's it. Minus 242. So we are having L squared minus 11L minus 242 equals 0. All right, so there are two things that might happen here. We can either do this with like factoring. If factoring doesn't work, the only way is to use quadratic formula, which I really suggest you know. Okay, when it comes to factoring, how much do you know about factoring this equation? Do you know how to do it?
I know you probably can't do it.
Mm-hmm. So, have you ever heard about AC method?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So, if it is going to work, then it should work with the AC method. If that's not working, then quadratic formula is the only thing. So I'm just gonna try a few things here. So 242, two numbers. When I multiply them, I'm supposed to get negative 242. When you add those two numbers, so this thing is the AC. Multiply the numbers, you are supposed to get A times C, 1 times negative 242. When you add them together, you're supposed to get B, negative 11 here.
Yep.
So let's see if we can make this work out. Otherwise, we have to do those calculations. So this is going to be 2, 121. Interesting. 121 is 11 times 11. Okay. So for 242, I can write it as 121 times 2. And if I try to do that, okay, so if you want this to be negative, one of them is supposed to be negative, one of them is supposed to be positive. Doesn't matter. Negative 1 times 121, or the other way around. When you try to add them, it's going to be too big.
Yep.
No way it's going to give us negative 11. So let's look at another pair of numbers. What if we do 22? So 2 times 11, 22 times 11. This one looks pretty promising to me. How do you think we can work with this?
You can do negative 22 plus 11.
That's it. So negative 22 times 11 is this. Negative 22 plus 11 is negative 11. All right, so how can I use these two numbers?
You can write L squared.
Mm-hmm.
L squared. What?
So, yep, go on. Let's see how this is gonna go.
11 squared minus 22L
Yes.
plus 11L
Mm-hmm.
minus 242 equals 0.
Minus 242 equals 0. Yep. So I see how you're doing it, and it's perfectly fine. But there is also another way that you can do faster because from what I see here, you're going to do like group factoring and do that. Again, that's perfectly fine. It's definitely going to work. But in cases when your A is equal to 1, once you find those two numbers, it's done. Like you don't need to do all these extra steps. And instead, you can just open two parentheses, write down 1L here, 1L here, put one of your numbers in the first parentheses, so negative 22, and put the second one in the second parentheses, and make this equal to 0. If you do it this way, again, only if you have a 1 as your A, it's going to save you much more time during your exams. And then for here, we have to set each parentheses equal to 0. So L minus 22 equals 0. L plus 11 equals 0. What are the two values of L here?
Plus 22 and minus 11.
That's it. Plus 22 and minus 11. Now we are saying that length, L is length here. Which one of these values do you think makes sense for length?
22.
That's it. We can't have a negative number as the length, so this one goes away. The length is equal to 22.
Okay.
Right here. Now, if the question asks for W, then you just have to do an extra step. You say W is L minus 11. So 22 minus 11 becomes 11. This is an 11 times 22 rectangle.
Okay.
All right, how are we feeling so far about these?
Good.
Okay, I see you're also doing great on answering them. So just to look at like the questions again, we have some kind of like graphing. So use the graph to find the indicated value. Do you have problem with this one?
Yes.
All right. So let's take a look. So it says use the graph, find the indicated value. Y equals f of x. So what you have here is your f of x, find f of negative 5. Again, the negative 5 is replacing your x. So you know that you're going to look at x of negative 5, negative 1, negative 2. It's going to be here. The point on your graph is here. Now, the value for it, you have to read the y value. So if we come here, now obviously this is not going to be very precise one, but we know that, okay, the y value is somewhere between 0 and 1. So your choice,
It's a A.
that's it. It's going to be choice A. So normally for these ones, when it's not very precise, they are going to give you choices that are like very obvious. So you can clearly say them. Okay, now domain and range. How about those?
Let's do number 7.
Let's do number 7. Okay, so use a graph to identify domain and range. First thing first for domain, which one of these is the x values? Which one is the y values?
Um, Domain is the x values.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's it. So the domain always tells you what x values you can have for that function. And the range says all the y values that you have in that function. Now, let's try to read the x values and y values on this specific graph. So when it comes to x values, you're kind of going to look at this horizontally. So you're going to say, okay, this is the graph. Let me just highlight it with green. All right. Green is going to be your graph here.
Mhm.
Now, when it comes to the x values, we say, okay, let's take a look at like the left side, sort of. So starting from 0 all the way to left, we see that it keeps having all these values. There is no gaps, nothing. So it includes all the numbers here. And it's not showing it very well on this problem, but most probably this is going to keep going. So it doesn't just stop at -11. It's just going to keep going, keep going. The same thing on the right side. So I say from what I see here, speaking of x values, it's going all the way to -infinity on the left side.
Mhm.
And then on the right side, again, it's going all the way to infinity. So when it comes to my domain, I'm going to say that d is from -infinity to infinity, again, for x. This means that it's going to include all x values.
Okay.
Now, when we are talking about the range, we have to look at this almost in a vertical manner. So we are going to look for the y values that we see on this graph. Looking at this part, do you see any y values that is negative on this graph?
Um, no.
Yeah, that's right. So you don't really see any point on this graph that has a negative y value. In fact, vertically, we are starting from here. So this is like the lowest point that we have is here, and it has a y of 0. And then when we go up, so again, we are thinking about it in terms of up and down. So this is where we start. And then when we go up, the highest points that we have is here, which means they have a y of 4. So thinking about the y values, all the things we start at 0, and then we have all these y values, 1, 2, 3, up to 4. Now, the way you're going to write this down again, for intervals, we are having parentheses and we have brackets. Do you know the difference between them?
Um, bracket is greater than or equal to in general.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
then
it.
yeah.
So another way we can think about it is that bracket is when the number that you're talking about is included in your graph, and parentheses means that it's not included. So in this case, I know that I'm going, first of all, we always go write down the smaller number on the left, the larger number on the right. So if I'm going from 0 to 4, I'm going to write 0, comma, 4. Now, the point that has the y of 0 is right here. And we can see that it's a solid point. It is in our graph. So we do have 0 in our y values. In a similar way, the points that have the y value of 4, we can see that they are all solid. So 4 is also included in our graph. We also use a bracket for that.
Will
Now
there
looking at,
always will there always be a range of 0?
no, it can be very different. For domain, again, domain and range, they both can be different depending on what type of graph they give you. This graph, it didn't have like any gaps, so that's how it looks like. But let's say this choice that we have is going to be B. So this is what we have now. But let's see if we have a graph like this. Um, Okay. And again, remember, like graphs can have many different shapes. They don't just give you like familiar ones in these types of questions. So let's say it looks like this. So almost here and then going up. Let's say if they give you something like this and they say determine the domain and range. This is why, again, domain and range, knowing what they are is important. So DR. So again, domain means X values. So you're going to think about it horizontally, left and right. So from left, I'm going to say, okay, starting from 0, if you look at it, it has all values. So it has -1, -2, up to this point. It stops at this point. And then on the right side, again, it goes, doesn't have any gaps. It has all X values up to this point. This is a -3. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. So from -3 to 4. You're going to write it down here for yourself. -3 and 4.
So the domain, the line doesn't actually have to touch the x-axis. It just has to be over it.
Exactly. You're just going to look at like the points, every single point that you have on that graph.
Okay.
So as long as you have this point here, for example, it's good to go. You're going to consider that. Now, when you, again, brackets and parentheses are also important. So write down the numbers from -3 to 4. Now, here is the important part. When you see it look like this, so when it's not like a solid point, when it is kind of like a hollow one, you're going to say this point is not really on your graph. So what you're going to do is that when you write down -3, because this is not really on your graph, it's not included, you will put a parenthesis for it. Now, the other end of it, we look at this point and it is a solid point. It is included in your graph. So for the 4, that was for this point, you will put brackets.
Okay.
Now, speaking of the range, this one is going to be funny. So again, range, now it's vertical, up and down. Look at the lowest point that you have and the highest point that you have. So the lowest point I have is here. It's almost 1, 2, 3. Let's say -4. So it starts at the -4. It keeps going up. Again, I look for gaps. The gaps are supposed to look like this, those hollow points. So little hollow points here, goes up. And again, for this one, I say, yes, this one is hollow point, but then we have other points that have a y value of 2. So we are good to go all the way to here. Now this one, 1, 2, 3. So from -4 to 3. You are down.
-3?
This is +3, sorry. I'm just trying to kind of like show it. So this point. And this point. So -4 and 3. Again, deciding on parentheses or brackets, we say, well, this point is on the graph. Should I put parentheses or brackets?
Bracket.
That's it. And how about this one?
Bracket.
Bracket for 3. So bracket for -4, bracket for 3.
Okay.
So as you can see, these domain and range questions, they are not always going to be like from -infinity to infinity. They can be literally anything. That's why we do it that way. Sometimes if there are gaps, so let's say if it looks like this, and then it might look like this. You're going to write down one interval just for this one, and then you will write down another interval for this one. So let's say if it looks like this, you put the union sign between them to list multiple intervals, if that's the case.
Okay.
All right, so we still have like 20 minutes left. Let's go
Number 8.
number 8. Yep. So find the domain of the function. Now, again, it's the same thing, but instead of graph, we are having like the actual function, the equation for it. Now, here is the different things you need to know. If you're having just a linear equation, mx plus b, for linear equation and quadratic equation, so ax squared plus bx plus c. For these two, the domain is negative infinity to infinity, or pretty much all x, unless the question says otherwise. If they don't say anything, then the domain is just all x for those. But there are a few functions you need to be careful about. One of them is rational function. The other one is radical function. So rational and radical. For the rational function, so rational function means that it is literally a fraction. We know that the denominator of a fraction can't be 0. This can't be 0. So you would want to say the domain is going to be all x, so from negative infinity to infinity, minus any x that makes your denominator 0. Denominator 0. But then again, the way we are going to write it down, we don't write it this way. This is just like an explanation of what we are going to do. And for radicals, again, we are going to say all x. Now for a radical, if it is an even index, so square root, not the cube root. For square root, we say the number on the radical can't be negative. So any x that makes your radical negative, again, must be excluded. Excluded. These are the two things that you will probably see with these problems. Now, the one that we have here, it's fraction, so it's going to be rational function. Rational function, we say we can't have x that make the denominator 0. So for here, what x values make the denominator 0?
Plus 4 and minus 8.
That's it. So if it is like very long or complicated, you have to solve it here. This one is a little easy. So say positive 4, negative 8. Now this is how you are going to write down the intervals for it. Sometimes it's easy. If you have an easy time with it, then perfect. If don't, then just say, okay, from negative infinity to infinity, the two numbers we had, negative 8 and 4. So we know that if, assuming that this is 0, negative 8 is going to be on the left side, positive 4 is going to be on the right side. So I'm going to say, let's imagine we say these two are excluded. We don't have them. So we put those hollow points here for them. Anything else is going to be included. So if you look at like our number line here, these two sort of divided our number line into 3 intervals. One of them is this part. One of them is this one. and the other one is this one. So you are going to write down 3 different intervals. The yellow one, we are going to say, is from negative infinity to negative 8. For infinities, always put parentheses. Now for negative 8, do you think it should be parentheses or bracket?
Parentheses.
That's it. Now for the blue interval, again, it's going to be from negative 8 to positive 4. Should I put brackets or parentheses?
Parentheses.
Yeah, parentheses for both. And can you tell me the third interval, the green one?
Um, Parentheses for infinity.
That's it, parentheses 4 and to infinity. And then because you have multiple intervals, we just put a union sign here to connect them. So it's going to be from negative infinity to negative 8, or negative 8 to 4, or 4 to infinity. Choice A. All right. Any questions about finding the domain?
No.
Is it kind of clear, like how we are doing it, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Could we actually go back to the problem, like the work that we did?
Right here?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So you took the domain from the fractions, and that's how you set it up on the number line.
Exactly. So the 2 numbers that I have here, remember we draw the number line based on the 2 numbers that make our denominator 0. So because this was a
Okay.
rational function, negative 8 and 4 make your denominator 0. This 0 is just for your reference. You're
Okay.
working with. So this is one gap. This is a second gap. It gives you 3 intervals.
Okay.
All right, let's go and see. Maybe we can cover 1 or 2 more questions. So, all right, it says graph the equations in the system. Do you want to do some graphing?
Yeah.
All right, so let's go here for 5x equals negative 20. So here is the idea. Normally, we have y equals mx plus b. That's a standard form for a line. Sometimes we have ax squared plus bx plus c. That's a standard form for a parabola. Now, when you are just having x, so when you just have x or when you just have y, then it means that you're going to have either a vertical line or a horizontal line. This is how you're going to treat them. So let's say you have 5x equals negative 20. To solve this, you just want to have an x here. So divide both sides by a 5. What is it going to be?
Negative 4.
That's it. X equals negative 4. Now, this is what it means. It means that, hold on, x equals, negative 4. It means for any y value that you have, it doesn't matter. For any y value, the x is always going to be negative 4. So all of your points are going to have an x of negative 4, just with different y values. So negative 4, negative 4, negative 4. It keeps going on. And then if you connect all these points, you are going to get a vertical line.
So the line it would be impossible for that line to go at an angle. It would just have to be a vertical line.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Because in this point, we don't have any, well, let's see. We actually do have a slope. I believe for vertical lines, the slope is infinity. If it is horizontal, it doesn't have a slope, this one. But we don't talk about like slopes on these ones as much. Just we say that if x is equal to c, c being a number, you get vertical line. Now, if y is equal to c, it means for any x value, you're going to get the same y value. If you draw it, you will get a horizontal line at that c or number.
Okay.
So for this one, this is going to be this choice. All right, let's see what else. So f of x equals -5. That's again what we just talked about. F of x and y, you can use them interchangeably. So you can also say this is y equals -5. This is supposed to be horizontal at -5. So it looks like this.
F of x equals y?
So if f of x, yeah, for f of x and y, you can use these interchangeably. So sometimes you put y equals -5, sometimes you can put f of x equals -5. They are the same thing.
And since there's no x, you know it's going to be horizontal.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's going to be choice B. And again, the reason behind it is that no matter what your x value is, you always get a y of -5. So this point is -5, this is -5, this is -5. Connect them, becomes horizontal. All right, so we are having, these ones are a little long. Maybe we can do like these two. Use the slope intercept. Mm-hmm. Which
11.
one? 11. Okay, let's see. So we are having the absolute value of this plus 4 less than 7. I believe for these ones, this is how we do it. So 5x plus 5 plus 4 less than 7.
-4.
Mm-hmm. Minus 4 on both sides. We get absolute value of 5x plus 5 less than 3. Now from here, it's been a while if I'm remembering it correctly. This was the formula, but you might want to check this again. So if you're having, let's say, absolute value of a less than something, so let's say less than c, to get rid of that absolute value, we can write this a between -c and c. Now, I think this is how it is, or it's supposed to be vice versa. I don't remember that, but this
I'm
should
pretty
be,
sure that's right.
yeah. So if a is greater than c, now you're going to get two things, two intervals. One of them is that a is less than -c, and the other one is a greater than positive c. So I believe this is like how it is. If this is not right, then you just have to switch them. So absolute value greater than c gives you this, and this gives you this. But this should be right from what I remember. So let's try to see if you're getting the right answer here. We say this problem that we have is going to be this situation. So we say the inside of absolute value, 5x plus 5 is supposed to be between -3 and 3. So -3 and 3. Now it's pretty much like doing any inequality, just whatever you do, you have to do to all three of these. What do you think we should do next?
-5 on all sides.
Exactly. minus 5 on all sides. We are going to get what?
-8
Yes.
is less than 5x
Yes.
is less than -2.
-2, that's it. And then how do we get x?
Divide them all by 5.
Yes. So I'm going to write it down here so we can see it more easily. We are saying that x is between -8/5 and -2/5. So looking, oh, where'd it go? Okay. So looking at this thing here, which one do you think should be the answer?
D.
Mm, pretty close, but be careful when you say that. Hold on. Yes, be careful to put the smaller number on the left and the larger number on the right.
Oh, it's larger first?
Yeah, so anytime you're writing an interval, you put smaller number here and then the larger number on the right side. You
Oh,
go
because
from
-8/5 is smaller than -2/5.
exactly. Because of the negative sign, this one is going to get smaller, even though 8 is more than 2.
Mhm.
So we are going to get choice B. And another thing, when you solve your inequalities, normally you end up with something like this. If you want to report your answer as an interval, again, this one is your smaller number, so -8/5. This one is your larger number, so -2/5. Now, the reason why do I use parentheses here, here, and here? Do you know that?
Um, oh, because there's no equal to?
Exactly. It's because of this sign. If you don't see an equal sign here, you put parentheses. If
Okay.
you don't see here, then you put parentheses again. All right, so I think we don't have enough time to start like a new one. So let's just review the things that we just did. So first thing first, when it comes to absolute values, be careful if you're solving them, they can't be equal to a negative number. Then for writing f minus g of x, it doesn't matter what you see. So f minus g of x, it means f of x minus g of x. F plus g of x, f of x plus g of x. So whatever you see here, you are going to do it exactly. So f of x times g of x, and for the other one, you're going to do f of x divided by g of x. You will have your equations, just plug them in here. Be careful with the signs. Then for these ones, it's solving inequalities. Again, for inequalities, there are times when you have answer, there are times when you have an infinite number of answers, and there are times when you don't have any answers at all if it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Word problems, write down all your information, use diagrams, use formulas, domain and range, practice them on the graph, and practice them just with the equation. And be comfortable with graphing. And finally, for absolute value ones, let me also check to see 11b. If you did it right, then the formulas were right. Yes, 11b. So these are going to be the formulas when you have absolute value inequality.
Okay.
All right, so that's it for today's workshop. Thanks for coming and participating. If you still have any problems, feel free to come back to us. We have one-on-one tutoring, so we can work on it.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye.
All right, thank you. Bye.